How you feeling, mate? Hey, welcome to Cycling Unboxed. I wanted to make this video as a guide that I would have liked to have known before I did the Mallorca 312. And that's because, let's face it, the 312 is actually a very daunting challenge. It's a tough Sportive. So it's nice to know what to expect before you get there. I'm going to go over the segments from start to finish and what to expect from each stage, such as picking up your numbers and the start of the race. So with that, let's get right to the booking. The actual booking of the event is very simple. You just sign up as if it's any other Sportive, you put all your details in and you pay for it. At one point they ask if you're going to do the 167, the 225 distance or the 312 distance. The choice is yours and you don't have to lock it in. It's just so they know roughly how many people are doing that distance. But if you make the time cuts for the longer distances, you're welcome to go. Next up, there's getting your race number. Right, here we are at the event village. Time to pick up our numbers. The race is on the Saturday and you can go any of the 2 days before, the Thursday or the Friday. And the event village is open from 9 to 9. So quite a lot of time to get your jersey and your number. There is no map, but I've put a little picture here which should help you get closer if you don't know precisely where it is. And the event village does start right next to the start line. There's hundreds and hundreds of cyclists and tents everywhere. You'll know it when you see it. So if you're cycling here, you've got to park up in the bike car park, get your number, and then you can go in and grab your number. You've got to find this big white tent, and conveniently, you've got to walk over all this gravel in your cycling shoes. Great fun. Now that you have completely ruined your nice carbon shoes, you can go and just explore the village if you want. Apart from the shoes, the whole process is pretty painless. You just go there, show your number, show your ID, and you can pick up your stuff. In terms of the actual number plate itself, you are supposed to put it on the front of the bike, and they highly recommend you don't put it anywhere else. If you do put it anywhere else, you won't get any pictures from the event. So if you're looking for pictures, definitely put it on the front. I did see a few other people put it in different positions, but I would just recommend putting it on the front there. You've got to get here very early because the queue is massive. I'd advise at least an hour and a half before, right? It starts at 6:30 and you've got to leave the start line by 7 AM. But the reason I'd recommend you get there an hour early is actually just because of how many people there are. If you get there too late, you're going to be starting right towards the back of that pack, and it takes a long time to get through the start line. So I'd recommend getting there probably at least an hour early, especially if you're trying to make the further time cuts. If you're trying to make the 225 or the 312, I'd recommend you get there even earlier. I will get more on time cuts a bit later. At the start, some years are warmer than others. We got lucky, so we didn't take a jacket or a jumper or anything. Ideally, if it is cold at the start, you would have someone there so you can take your jacket or jumper off and give it to them before you go jump into the queue. I also saw a lot of people buy some jumpers from charity shops and just ditch them on the start line. Not very eco-friendly, but that is one option as well. When you get to the start, you'll notice that your number has a colour. So last year mine was blue. When you get here, you've got to filter into the gate. That is your colour. And your colour's on the front there. If you're lucky enough, there was a pink zone and a yellow zone. So some people in the yellow zone set it off early before the main pack went. And if you had the pink pass, you set it off even earlier before the yellow zone. But most people will have that blue card and will set off as one big pack. It is very obvious where to go, as there's big signs that you walk up to and you just filter into your number. It takes a while to filter though because it is very, very busy. Do you have to wear the jersey? When I did it, the answer was no, you didn't have to wear the jersey. And generally it was about 50-50 if people wore the jersey or not. So half the people in the event did, half didn't, they just wore their own stuff. However, due to a number of incidents this year of people trying to sneak in, next year they might potentially make it mandatory. So feel free to look on the website when you sign up and they should let you know if it's going to be mandatory or not. Okay, let's get on to the time cuts of the Mallorca 312. So I've made a little table here so you can see just what speeds you need to do and how far you need to go before the time cuts are made. They might change this from year to year, but check if they're the same and then you can use the numbers that I've produced here for you. So if we look here, the first time cut to decide if you're going to do is at 11:10 a.m. So if you leave at bang on 6:30 in the morning, you have 4 hours and 40 minutes to complete the 97 kilometers to the first cutoff point. That means you'll have to average a speed of 20.8 kilometers an hour. But here's the kicker. If you leave at 7 a.m. rather than 6:30 a.m., just 30 minutes later, and you will have to do an average speed of 23.3 kilometers an hour through all of that climbing, and that is tough to do. At this first cutoff point, the choice is simple. It's really obvious. There's some big signs going down the middle of the road. If you want to do the 225 and the 312, after you come down Cold and Claret, you can either go left to do the 165 or right for the 212 and the 312, and it's just down there. If you do not get to this point by 11:10 in the morning, they will close off the route turning right, and you will have to go left down the 167 route. So they won't let you carry on past that time. Then if you want to do the 312 rather than the 225, you will have to reach the 220 kilometer mark by 4:20 p.m. If you manage to leave very early, closer to 6:30, that will be an average speed of 22.4 kilometers an hour. If you're unlucky to leave later, more towards the 7 a.m. mark, you're more likely going to have to average 23.6 kilometers an hour. So there's an extra 1.2 kilometers an hour average over all that distance. This is why it's so important to get there early at the race. And then finally, they want you to complete the whole route before sundown. So this will be at 8:40 p.m., 14 hours and 10 minutes into the event. If you leave at 6:30, this will be 22 kilometers an hour. And if you leave at 7 o'clock, it will be 22.8 kilometers an hour that you have to average. So nearly another kilometer an hour on top over all of that distance. Speaking of the time cuts, I can now talk about the Polkadot Jerseys. These are a group of guys that are wearing green polka dots, and they're basically like a back marker for the 312 distance alone. So if they go past you and you're only doing the 225 or the 167, doesn't matter. But if you're doing the 312, then try and hold on to them for dear life if they go past you. Before the 225 time cut, so they shift pretty quick, these guys. So if you see them come past, you're gonna have to work very hard to hold on to their tail. But they start to gently slow down and ease off a bit more, especially when you start to get closer to that 220 cutoff mark to make the 312. And the pace becomes a bit more relaxed and easier to hold on. You can, of course, draft these guys as much as you want to. You can just sit on their tail, sit on their group, and they will pull you through the whole event if you would like them to. But like I said, they move quick at the start, so don't leave it late to join into their group. You want them to catch up to you as late as possible through the event. Your time. Your time starts and ends as you cross the start/finish line of the 312 event. So any stops, any food breaks will count into your average speed. Frustratingly, the time cuts don't apply to when you cross the line. The time cuts start at 6:30. Next up are the aid stations. The aid stations are extremely busy on the 312. It's literally that one truck for all of these people. And this is one thing where the event falls short. They could do with a lot more aid stations on the event itself. It is a real battle to fill up your bottles of water. Laura and I personally opted to miss the first aid station, which is just water. But even when you're missing or skipping an aid station, there is a clog to get through. We're just at the first water stop and it's chaos. You have to get off your bike to go through. And even if you don't stop for them, they still slow you down for a bit. If you really, really need to, you can stop for water and buy them from shops along the side. Quick pit stop with half a Coke each. Sometimes if you're further towards the back, the shops do sell out of water and bottles and cans of Coke and stuff like that, or whatever you want to drink. So try not to rely on the shops for yourself. When you actually do finally get into the aid stations and you sit in your queue, they do have lots of food there. They've got cans of Coke, they've got lots of gels, they've got sandwiches for you, they've got oranges you can suck on, and of course they've got water there to refill your bottles as well. There's now just a few extra little bits that I want to get through, and the first extra little thing is toilets for females. So sadly, there are only toilets for females at the aid stations, and usually there's only 3 or 4 toilets. Laura did use just one of them, and she actually didn't have to queue for very long, and they were fairly clean, she said, but this could just be one station and the others might not be like that. So be warned, as a female, going to the bathroom just might be a little bit harder for you. I did see lots of guys standing on the side of the road, obviously going to the bathroom. It is technically public urination, but on an event, no one really cares. And generally as a whole anyway, I only did 1 wee throughout the whole day when I was there because it was so warm and you're sweating so much, even though you're going through liters of water. So actually they're not as needed as you would think they would be. And then finally, I just wanted to go over the busyness of the event itself. It is a massive event and there are so many cyclists there. So I split the event up into kind of 3 stages for you, just to kind of say what's going to happen at each stage. The first stage is the flat going from Alcudia to Col de Femenia, which is the first climb of the day. This bit is very, very busy, but the roads are wide, so there is a bit more space for you to maneuver and stuff. You will notice if you're not going for time that there are a lot of guys that are going for time, and they will be absolutely flying past you. So make sure to always leave some space on the left, just so those guys can get past. We don't want any accidents happening. The second stage for me is going from the Col de Femenia to the first cutoff point. This part of the race is pretty much pure climbing and it is so busy. I mean, you are packed almost shoulder to shoulder, left to right. There is actually lots of control through the event, so you don't need to go crazy. Just kind of stick with the pack the whole time and just make sure you keep a look over your shoulder so you're not getting in anyone's way and they're not getting in your way either. It is hard to move up through this space because there is a lack of space, but you can do it. You just have to wait for your moment and be careful. When it comes to the descents on this stage, it does tend to thin out a little bit, but they are still very busy. So you still have to be looking over your shoulder on the descents to make sure that you're being careful. And then finally, after you get to the first cutoff point where you do the 167 and the 225 split, the amount of cyclists do tend to thin out from there forward. So the further along you go from that point, the thinner the group of cyclists are going to get. You do notice that people tend to end up in bunches, especially after you get out of Andrax and along to the flatter areas.
I've also got a big old peloton following me.
And by this point, most people are just looking for a wheel to follow. So if you're moving fairly quickly, people will just jump on your wheel. And that's fine if you don't mind doing the work. But if you come off to rotate, people will not come up and they will just keep on sitting on your wheel. One thing I forgot to mention is that the roads do open at about 4:30, but they're not like open. You might see like one car and they'll be coned off in their own lane. So you'll still have all the space to move and stuff. But just beware after 4:30 that you might see a car once every hour. And that's the final stage as it starts to thin there. So everyone, this has been my guide to the Mallorca 312. If there's anything that you think I have missed and people should know, please put it in the comments below. And if I say anything wrong, feel free to correct me, because I like to read all of the comments and I'll get back to all of them. Thank you so much for watching this guide on how to do the Mallorca 312. This has been Cycling Unboxed. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.